Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is a distinguished applied physicist, USA national best-selling author, and global philanthropist with a PhD in applied physics from Yale University. Dr. Prasad has spent decades at the forefront of scientific innovation, including his work as a senior physicist at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, contributing to the National Ignition Facility. Beyond science, is deeply committed to global impact, serving as president of Butterflies USA, supporting marginalized children in New Delhi, and chairperson of Amandla Development, empowering at-risk youth in South Africa. His work bridges science, leadership, and humanity with a focus on persistence, purpose, and creating meaningful change. Dr. Prasad, it's an honor to have you here with Conversations with Sekani.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank you so
right, so yes, so I want you to take us back, right, to probably your early 20s, right? So take us back to your early academic journey. What initially drew you to physics?
Well, there were two reasons that I got into physics. The first one is I'm a person who is curious and
Hmm.
have been ever since I was a child. And so I was obviously drawn to physics and applied physics because that's how you learn how things work. And I love to tinker, love to make things with my hands, and it all added up very nicely. And then I was inspired by Neil Armstrong landing on the moon back in 1969 in July. And I asked my father, who was watching the moon landing with me, as to what Neil Armstrong did in order to
Hmm.
get this position of being the first man on the moon. And my father said, "Oh, he's a physicist." And that wasn't exactly true. It turns out he's a test pilot, but nonetheless, it got me excited about joining the whole ranks of
Yes.
becoming a physicist. And there's lots of people in my generation who were inspired by the moon landing.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yes, I would say once again, it's a pleasure to have you on my podcast. So,
Thank
yeah, my podcast is actually for young adults, right,
you.
who are trying to figure out life. That's why we bring professionals like you so you can, hold our hands and show us the way, literally. So, I mean, were there moments early on where you actually doubted your path or questioned whether you were on the right track?
Oh, absolutely. A
Hmm.
lot of times. One of the things I realized after I got into physics and started doing my studies in physics and went to university, there were other people that were studying other subjects like economics in particular and finance. And in
Hmm.
talking to them, I realized that they were going to be making much, much more money after graduating than I would.
Hmm.
And for a moment, that made me doubt whether I was doing the right thing. But I would always come back to the thing which has been a driving factor in my life, which is, will it also be meaningful to me? Will it also make me happy? Will it also fulfill me, not just by giving me a lot of money, but by giving me what else we need? And we need a lot more than just money in order to be living happy lives. And that's what brought me back to physics because I was always excited every day to go to class, every day to go to the
Hmm.
laboratory to do research. It was always exciting, always something new. And that's how I knew I was on the right path because I wanted to go to work every morning.
Hmm. Wow. All right. So yes, thank you, Rahul, for that one. And yes, my key takeaway from what you just said would be, I think, doing what you enjoy, right? Go for
Absolutely.
whatever you enjoy. Not
Absolutely.
right, not for the money. It should be something you enjoy so that later on in life, when you keep doing it, you always, find joy in it rather than going for money and then getting burnt out later in life and stuff like
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think the other thing which happens is even early on, when you
Mhm.
do something which you are passionate about, which you enjoy, it doesn't feel like work. it feels like
Exactly.
play. I remember as a graduate student at Yale University, I got a job as a teaching assistant
Mm,
to be a teaching assistant for a professor who was teaching a class in aerodynamics for people that were not science majors. And my job as a teaching assistant was to go to hobby shops to buy toys that
mm,
demonstrated principles of aerodynamics, then build those toys and play with them while the professor instructed the class about how these toys were explaining a principle in aerodynamics.
mm.
And I remember waking up one morning, pinching myself, saying, did I die and go to heaven? Because somebody's paying me to play with the toys that I would pay money to play with.
Hmm.
And so it wasn't
Wow.
work. It was fun. It was just you know, much more exciting for me to do.
Hmm.
And that is
Exactly.
the reason why I continue with it.
Wow. All right. So yes, I hope my listeners will learn from this because personally, I must say I'm learning a lot, right? It's about, going for what gives you joy, right? And what you're passionate about. And
Yes.
yes, talking about, your career, right, in science. So for young people today who are pursuing probably demanding fields, what's the biggest misconceptions about success in academia or science?
I think the biggest misconception about success in science is that it is something that only very few people can understand.
Hmm.
That people that you are born with this idea that you can be a scientist or you cannot be a scientist. I don't believe that's true. I think it is all to do with learning and to see what interests you. If
Right.
you're curious by nature, science is an absolute right fit for you because your
Hmm.
curiosity will keep driving you to learn more. And unfortunately, at least in the US, high school education, a lot of times science is not taught in an exciting way. And that is why a lot of people think, oh, I don't understand this because they're talking about abstract things. But science is not abstract, it's about our daily lives, it's about the world we live
Hmm.
in. And so that
Hmm.
is the misconception, I think, the biggest driver that keeps people from wanting to get into science and actually giving it a shot.
Hmm. Hmm. Right, I think you're right, actually. Personally, I think science, I don't want to say this, right? Because I'm literally talking to a scientist, but I think science is hard, right? I run away from science. But,
Well,
right,
but
like you said, it's a misconception.
I think so because I mean, finance is hard, law is hard, medicine is hard.
Hmm.
Anything you do is hard in the
Right.
beginning, but you continue doing it for some reason. And
Hmm.
sometimes the reason is because your parents told you to do it, or they said you
Right.
must be a scientist when you grow up, or you must be an engineer when you grow up, and you do it, which isn't the right reason to choose it. Sometimes you
Right.
do it because it's a way to make money, to make a living. Well, that's okay because everybody has to do something to make a living. So that's fine. But if you do it because you enjoy it and you get your money to earn a living, then you're
Right.
really going to be good at it.
Wow.
And
Hmm.
and it's true not just of science. I think it's true of all professions.
Hmm. Exactly. Wow. Okay. I would say thank you for that one, actually. Now
You're
I'm
very
gonna
welcome.
take away that mentality, honestly. And yes, I want us to do a deep dive into your work, actually. So you've worked on groundbreaking projects like the National Ignition Facility. So can you
Yes.
break down what that work represents in simple terms?
Yes. So, really, what we are trying to do at the National Ignition Facility is create a miniature sun because the
Mm,
sun produces a lot of energy through nuclear fusion. When you have the right temperature, the right pressure, hydrogen atoms can combine. And when they combine and create a helium atom, it releases a lot of energy. And that's
mm,
what powers the sun, which provides all the energy that we get for heating the planet, for from solar power, all kinds of different things. And what we're trying to do is create that in the laboratory in a controlled way so that we can harness that energy. The byproduct of the reaction in nuclear fusion is helium, which is not radioactive. So it doesn't have some of the issues that come with conventional nuclear power, where you get radioactive waste, which you then have to bury deep in a mountain or take care of for a long, long time. So that is the reason to get into doing nuclear fusion, to find an alternative and very cheap form of energy, which does not require burning fossil fuels or creating a lot of nuclear waste. And it also is not dependent on the weather, because when you use solar power, if you get clouds, well, now you don't produce as much energy. If you're using wind power and the wind dies down, you don't produce any energy. If you use tidal waves to create energy, if the wave action reduces, you don't produce energy. So you're very dependent on climate factors, whereas with nuclear fusion, you're not dependent on the climate.
Right. Wow. So honestly, I'm curious to ask this, right? Do you think it's possible that we can ever, achieve
Yes.
nuclear fusion? Is it
Yes,
possible?
it is definitely possible. So I think we are on the right path, and I think it will
Hmm.
happen. It is a big challenge, so it won't come quickly. But if we persist and we put in the right amount of resources to continue working on it, I think it will actually happen because in the laboratory, in a small scale, we have shown that we can actually produce energy from this reaction. Now, the challenge is to do it in a way that it is sustainable and will produce energy that can be then plugged into the national grid so that you can start powering homes and factories, etc. And honestly,
All right.
we will need it with the large amount of computer power we are harnessing because of the use of AI.
Wow. All right. AI. It's amazing what AI has done, actually, right?
Exactly.
It's amazing. I mean, in every field, AI is helping out, I would say. But talking about nuclear fusion, right? If you could take a guess, how long do you think it can take to actually achieve it?
Well, I think to be practical, where you're actually getting power out of it, it is somewhere between 15 and 20 years from today.
Hmm. Wow.
So not an inordinate amount of time, but certainly not tomorrow.
Wow. All
I wish
right.
I could say tomorrow.
Same actually. But yeah, we have to be realistic, right?
Yeah.
So talking about, the future and specific innovations. So what excites you most about the future of, scientific innovations today?
I think the most exciting aspect of scientific innovations, there are really two that excite me tremendously. One is the continued understanding of the human brain.
Mm,
We've learned over the past 100 years or so a lot about the human body. We can cure all kinds of things from heart disease to, various types of diseases like tuberculosis and other diseases. And we're learning a lot about how to manage cancer, how to cure cancer, even
mm,
in certain types of cancers. And we're learning a lot about aging. But I think what we still don't have a very good handle on is the brain. How does the
mm,
brain work? How do we feel pain? What is a quantitative measure of pain? If you say that you have a fever, you can go to the doctor, they'll put a thermometer in your mouth or point it
mm,
at your forehead, and they know exactly what the temperature is. But if you go to the doctor and say, I feel pain, they cannot tell you how much pain you're in.
mm,
And that's because we don't understand how the brain senses pain. And so I think that's one of the two most exciting things that can that's going to happen in the near future. And then the next thing I think is, of course, everybody's talking about it, artificial intelligence, and
mm,
how it is helping change the way we think, the way we do things, and it is really quite extraordinary as to what you can do with it. And I, for instance, till about a year ago, I used to use Google to search. I don't use Google anymore. I use an AI tool. I ask Gemini, or I ask ChatGPT, or I ask Claude, or Perspicacity, and they give me much better answers. So
Hmm.
why would I use a silly typing way in when I can actually talk to my computer and get an answer?
Wow. Right, exactly. I'm totally in support of the AI stuff. I think it has helped a lot, although there are some
Yes.
arguments that it has done more harm than good, right? And then there are some
Yes.
that says, but what do you think about that actually?
I think that any human innovation has the possibility to do harm and good.
Hmm.
And it's up to us as humans to control it and to do good with it and not harm,
Wow.
right? And
Right.
it's true of all of our innovations. If you look at so many innovations that have been used for warfare, they've also been helpful without the warfare. Like, for example, the whole business of tracking, these air tags that we have that we can put into our luggage or we can put into wallets and things like that. So we can keep track of where these items are. The keychain, where is it? That all started with the army, and they built RFID chips so that they could track where the various pieces of war equipment were. But they
Hmm.
could be used for that or they could be used for good. So I think it's up to us to use
Right.
it for good. You can use medicine to create weapons, which are going to kill a lot of people, and you can use medicines to cure people.
Hmm. Wow. All
Right.
right. I think that's an interesting take. I must say it's quite interesting. And I actually do, support what you said, right? But then
Yes.
right, I want us to go in depth a little bit right into science, right? Talking about
Yes.
because you mentioned the brain. So, do you think we would ever get to the point where the brain will be combined with technology, like the idea behind Elon's neural link?
Right. So I think that's going to happen. And
Hmm.
again I think it's a question of using it correctly because it's not just a neural link, but it turns out that on a smaller scale, they've been able to implant chips that help with allowing humans with thought to control prosthetic devices.
Hmm.
So a person who has lost a limb, an arm or a leg or something like that, and they get a prosthetic device, a lot of people have now being treated where they can use the brain to control the prosthetic device, which is quite different from what it was 100 years ago when, you had a prosthetic device, but it didn't do very much. There was no kind of dexterity in the fingers, if you will. There was just a hook at the
Right.
end. And so a lot of work has already gone on, and I think this is one of those things where it's going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and it can be used for tremendous good because it may be able to help people who cannot see to be able to see. People who cannot hear might be able to hear. There's so many different things where they could be revolutionary in terms of the good it can do. But of course, then it can also produce a negative result because you have a computer chip which can be programmed to make you do something bad.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we have
Wow.
to have safeguards in place, in my view. You can't have one person controlling everything. So
Hmm.
that's my problem with Elon doing it is because that's one man. He can do whatever he wants.
Right.
But you need a group of people who have a collective wisdom that is greater
Hmm.
than the wisdom of one person.
Hmm. Exactly. Hmm. Okay. All right. That's an interesting take, I must say. And yeah, we've touched, science. We've gone deep down into your work,
Yes.
right? So I want us to talk about philanthropy, right, and the purpose. So alongside your scientific career, you've dedicated yourself to humanitarian work, right? So what actually led you down that path?
So what led me down that path is because I started getting a little impatient in terms of seeing the impact of my work.
Hmm.
And, in science, as I told you, the fusion will happen today. 10 to 15 years, 15 to 20 years from today. So if you go back to when I started working with children, that was about 10, 15 years ago now. The answer was 30 to 40 years. And I wanted to see results faster. That was number one. Number two, I have come to the realization, I don't think this is something new, it's something everybody knows, that children have potential regardless of where they're born. They have the
Mm,
brains regardless of where they are born. What happens is some people get the advantage of education and the
mm,
brains can be unlocked and can be used. And there are other people who don't have the advantages of getting an education, and so they're unable to rise to their full potential. And
mm,
genius exists everywhere. So it's not handed out based on the amount of money your parents have. It is not handed out on the basis of the amount of influence or power your parents have. It comes naturally. And that is why I got involved with raising funds for marginalized children, and particularly outside the US, because I think there are more needy children outside the US. We do have lots of need in the US as well, but there's a lot of people that are solving that problem. So I figured I
mm,
would devote my efforts to reaching out in places where, in South Africa, for instance, where the children have such a large possibility of getting born with HIV or AIDS,
mm.
and they may not even survive until adulthood, leave alone reach their full potential. So the need I thought was very dramatic, and that's why I started getting involved with it.
Mm. All right. Okay. Personally, I would say I think you're doing an amazing job, right? And not
Thank you.
many people do that. So it's commendable, I must say, especially considering the fact that you're putting into consideration children that are outside of the US, right? Because those are the
Yes,
people I think really do need that. You
they
understand? So,
do.
right.
They do need the help.
Exactly. So yeah, talking about your organizations, right? Your philanthropy. So through organizations like Butterflies USA and Amandla Development, what have you learned about impact at a human level?
I think it's huge. I visited Amandla and have spoken with children there. I've visited butterflies. I've spoken with children who come to the butterfly centers as well. And if you listen to them talking about things which are so different from what they are being brought up in, you realize that opening their eyes to possibility is all you need to do. One
Mm,
child at Butterflies India was telling me about the workings of the cooperative bank that they run, because the children are street children. They live on the streets. They don't have an address. They cannot open a regular bank account. So Butterflies opened a bank, a cooperative bank that the children run. They staff it. They run it with adult supervision, of course, where they can save their money. And
mm,
he was telling me that he was serving as the bank manager. And so I asked him, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" He says,
mm.
"Well, I'm going to be a bank manager."
Wow.
He said, "Well, why do you think you can be a bank manager?" He says, "Well, I'm a bank manager right now, am I not? And I'm not even 15 years old.
Hmm.
So I think when I grow up, I can be a much better bank manager." And I said, "See, this is the impact. This is how you change lives, one person at a time, by opening their eyes to the possibility."
Mm,
This child coming from parents who were his parents are day laborers. They work on the streets. They pick up things and carry it for people and get a little money for it. They would never even dream of setting foot inside of a bank, leave alone running the bank. So,
exactly.
but the child, he's good at numbers. He was really good at talking about what the bank did, and he had a full understanding of how a bank works. He was able to do that because of an organization like Butterflies.
Wow. Right. I'm curious, right? Butterflies, Amandla. Are there any organizations like this here in Nigeria? I mean, do you guys visit Nigeria to at least try to, also educate the kids and
I I'm sorry to say that I haven't done that so far, and I'm not fully aware of what is happening in terms of organizations like this in Nigeria, but I am sure that there must be some. I ran into a person, and it's not Nigeria, but I ran into a person who got an education by being picked up by somebody who funded his education in the US, and he went back to Sudan. He came from South Sudan. He's gone back to Sudan, and he has created a school there to help children and to teach them because he found his way into life through education because his family was killed. Every single one of them was killed during the war.
Okay. Yes, so I want us to touch on your identity, perspective, and growth, right? So you've lived a life that spans science, leadership, and service. So how has your definition of success evolved over time?
It's evolved quite dramatically, I think. Initially, when I first started out in my career, it was what everybody views as success. You get a job, you get more money, you get a promotion, you get more responsibility. That's success, and that's what everybody wants. And as I've grown older and I've started to work with children, I think success has changed. My definition of success now is how many people have I made an impact on? How many people I had an impact that has changed the direction of their lives? I don't have to necessarily, I don't think success is helping them become different or anything like that, but helping them look at the world in a different way, look at new possibilities, make a change in directions that they thought was not even possible. And that has now become my definition of success. How am I leaving the world a better place than when I came on this planet?
Wow. All right. So yes, thank you so much for that one, actually. And I wish a whole lot of people could have the same, mindset as you. I think the world would be a better place, honestly.
Absolutely. I think, if each one of us humans decides to help one other human, just one other human, I think we can solve all the problems of this planet.
Exactly.
We just have to
Ooh.
work together as a group, not keep fighting with each other.
Exactly. All right. So, well, I think my own path is creating this podcast, right? So people
Wonderful.
can, listen to it and then yes change lives basically because I think this conversation would actually change lives and talking about changing lives. I believe you have advice for younger adults, right, which
Yes.
is the purpose of my podcast. So if you could speak directly to someone in their 20s literally trying to navigate life, what would you tell
Yes.
them?
I would tell them do something that excites you. When,
Hmm.
of course, you don't immediately stop doing whatever it is you're doing right now, even if it doesn't excite you. What you want to do is set yourself in the direction and make small changes, make micro pivots. Choose wisely. Look for something that excites you. Try it out for size. Continue to do what you're doing, but try on something in the evening, on the weekends, and see if that makes you feel differently, if it makes you feel better. If it does, then try it out a bit more and then start reducing what you're doing right now so that you can make the change into something that is more meaningful to you, something that you enjoy doing, because when you enjoy doing it, you're going to go do it well. When you do it well, you're going to be rewarded for it, which is going to make you enjoy it even more, and so on and so on. The cycle will go and it becomes a virtuous cycle.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
that is a way in which you should consider moving upwards rather than just making a change for the sake of making a change. Make a change purposefully so that you are finding meaning in everything that you do.
Hmm. Wow. Making purposeful changes actually,
Yeah.
right? That's the keyword right there. All right, so yes, thank you so much, Dr. Prasad. i
Thank you.
think I think this has been a powerful and insightful conversation, bridging science, leadership, and humanity in a really meaningful way. So I would say thank you for sharing your
Thank
journey
you.
and perspective. Right.
Thank you. I'm happy to do that. And thank you for having me on your podcast. The more people I can reach, the more I can help people.
Exactly. All right. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Which brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so you could either answer in a word or a phrase. So starting now, what is one quality every leader must develop?
Empathy,
Hmm, right. Okay, so what is one habit that builds long-term success?
persistence,
Hmm. And finally, what does impact truly mean to you?
changing lives.
Wow, this is one of the best rapid fire I've had. You just had those words like, man, that was amazing, I must say.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Dr. Prasad. And yes, where can listeners, try to connect with you and also learn more about you?
You can go to my website, which is rahulrprasad.com. You can find me on TikTok and on Instagram, Rahul Prasad Creates, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Right. Okay. Noted. And for Instagram, I'm definitely checking that one out. Yes, and to my listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episode. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Rahul Prasad, and it's been a pleasure to have a wonderful day ahead of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It has
All
been
right.
wonderful.